Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Cade, joined by Andrew, and for today's episode, we are going to be reviewing Home Alone from 1990. Andrew, I'm curious, is this a Christmas movie that you grew up with as a kid? Because it's often regarded as one of the best Christmas movies of all time. And for you personally, did you ever consider it one of the best as a kid or even now?
Overall for me, I didn't really grow up with this one. I don't think I saw this one until, geez, or maybe my early teens, just because I just never had the chance. I grew up more with, Muppet Christmas Carol, Polar Express, How the Grinch Stole Christmas with Jim Carrey. So I didn't really grow up with this one, but overall, would I say it's one of the best Christmas movies? No, in my opinion, but it's certainly not a bad movie either.
Well, actually, funny enough, this wasn't the first Home Alone movie that I watched as a kid. The first one that I saw was actually Home Alone 2, Lost in New York.
And were you very confused watching it?
Pretty much, yeah. I watched that movie and I didn't understand any of the references to the original. So when I finally watched the first one not too long after, it all made a lot more sense. For me personally, is it my favorite Christmas movie of all time? No, but I still think it's a classic and I'll never argue with that. But to start off with our pros, Andrew, let's talk about the plot. Do you want to start this off?
Yeah, the plot of this movie is honestly pretty simple. Kevin gets left home alone by accident by two very irresponsible parents who somehow managed to do it again and still have custody of their children. But Kevin gets left alone and he does what any kid would do when they have that kind of freedom for the first time. He basically kind of goes ham, eating lots of junk food, staying up late, jumping on the bed, and then discovers that his house is being targeted by the two most incompetent burglars in film history and realizes that, well, this is my house and I'm going to defend it.
And he does.
And he does.
A pro that I want to highlight about the plot of this movie is actually how it utilizes Christmas. Family is a big part of the story, which is what Christmas is all about. And I mean, you have Kevin McAllister, who at the beginning, just absolutely hates his family. He's just sick of them. He's just annoyed. There's that scene where he's just jumping up and down going, when I grow up, I'm living alone. I'm living alone. And when he's sent up to the attic, he wishes that they'd all just disappear and he gets his wish when they all leave in the morning without him. And then a big part of his arc throughout the movie is him growing to miss his family and realizing that he didn't appreciate them enough. And the fact that this story is about Kevin growing to miss his family after they leave at home, I think works really well with a Christmas theme.
Yeah, that definitely works. That's a good utilization of Christmas because this is the time of year where a lot of families do come together and you get to see people you don't see terribly often and all supposed to be very cozy and fun and lots of love. So using that as a backdrop for Kevin to kind of grow and realize that, yeah, maybe I was being a bit of a brat. Maybe I did say some things that I really didn't mean. That's a good use of the holiday season as a backdrop for your main character sort of growing up and maturing a bit.
And I think what's also fun about the story is how we see Kevin surviving on his own while his family's away. I mean, because yeah, he's still in his home and everything, but again, he's only, what, like 8 years old? While he's on his own, apart from defending his house from the wet bandits, you see him go to the grocery store, he gets food, laundry detergent, and other stuff. Or even when he's just wandering around the neighborhood, he goes into that church, he has that talk with Mr. Marley where they talk about each other's families. And while I do enjoy the movie as a Christmas story, I think it's also a good story about how a kid matures more because as you get older, you do tend to appreciate things a lot more. And that's, I think, what happens to Kevin regarding his relationship with his parents and his siblings.
Yeah, and I think the fact that Macaulay Culkin was a very talented child actor is what really helps sell it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and with that, I guess we should talk about the performances and the characters more, starting off with Macaulay Culkin as Kevin.
I really like, we just sort of talked about this, but I like his growth throughout the movie. And I also like the fact that apparently this is the most handy and clever kid in all of history, coming up with these schemes to protect his house. Obviously, you got his iconic traps he uses to defend against the wet bandits. But the fact that he managed to come up with the idea of using the mannequins from the basement and his Michael Jordan cutout to make it look like the house was still occupied, that takes a level of cleverness that you wouldn't expect to see from an 8-year-old kid.
And what's kind of funny about that is, he creates all these traps. He also has all the mannequins set up, and yet he's too scared to pack a suitcase.
Yeah, too scared to pack a suitcase and still scared of the, well, at least for a good chunk of the movie, scared of the furnace in the basement.
But I think part of what Macaulay Culkin does so well, despite the fact that Kevin, he can be a brat, and this gets talked about a lot, he's kind of a little genius psychopath, if you think about it. But I think what works is Macaulay Culkin, I think, brings a certain likability to the character because Kevin could have just been a really, really annoying kid. But what works well is that Macaulay Culkin, he has a very likable on-screen presence, and it makes him someone who you can root for in the end. And you know what? This movie is directed by Chris Columbus, who went on to direct movies like the first two Harry Potter films. So I think one thing's clear, he is good at getting great performances out of kid actors.
Yeah, that takes a special touch because there's few things more awkward than seeing bad child acting.
And actually, fun fact about how Chris Columbus is the director of this film. So originally, before he got the job to direct this, he was originally going to direct Christmas Vacation.
Yes, and then he met Chevy Chase.
Yep, because both movies were written and produced by John Hughes, and Christmas Vacation was the script that he got first, but then everything fell apart when he met Chevy Chase, and he told John Hughes, I can't work with Chevy, but then a couple weeks later, he gets the script for Home Alone, and I'm honestly glad that he directed this instead.
Yeah, I think he's better with more family-friendly stuff too, because as much as I love Christmas Vacation, it's definitely one of the more adult-oriented Christmas classics.
Yeah, I agree. But we also need to talk about some of the other performances and characters in the movie, and we definitely need to talk about Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern as Harry and Marv.
There's two of them, and I don't think there's three brain cells between the two of them.
No, these guys are just awesome. Both actors play off each other just so incredibly well, but also Harry and Marv themselves, just as the film's antagonists, they're, I think, the best kind of morons that you could have in a movie, to be honest.
They really are, because it never gets into the realm of you feel bad for them because they are convicts and they are trying to break into this kid's house. So as a result, you never feel bad for them having to go through all of Kevin's borderline sadistic torture. But again, they play off of each other so well. And the fact that there is not three brain cells between the two of them. And when I was doing research getting ready for this review, apparently Daniel Stern and Joe Pesci didn't think this movie was going to be successful.
They did not, no.
So as a result, they decided to go way over the top with their performances.
And honestly, I think that makes the movie even better, and the characters themselves even better.
Yes, it's a slapstick comedy, so you need bumbling bad guys to sell the slapstick comedy.
And honestly, one of my favorite moments with the Wet Bandits, it's a really small one, but it's just when they're robbing one of the houses, and Marv is just going around with the goggles and the snorkel on his head, just making all the noise that he can. Or even the scene where they show up at the McAllister house, and Kevin's just rocking around in the house, got all the mannequins set up, and they're just convinced that the family came back. Yeah, guys, they're clearly real people in there.
Yes, pay no attention to the fact that they're all making the same exact movements on a continuous loop. Aren't you two supposed to be like accomplished cat burglars?
Also, and this has annoyed me more as I've gotten older, just the fact that when Kevin ziplines out of the house into the tree fort and then they're just in there, they decide to climb across the rope to get over there. So you've spent this entire movie trying to get inside the house and you're finally alone in there and you don't take anything with you.
And what really sells them chasing him to the treehouse is that they'd already been through some of Kevin's traps. Did they really think that he wasn't going to have anything in his back pocket? Again, these two are so stupid. But again, you kind of need to be for this kind of movie.
Yeah, you do. But apart from Harry and Marv, one other character and performance that I actually want to highlight is Roberts Blossom as Mr. Marley. I like how for most of the movie, Kevin is afraid of Marley because of all the stories that he hears from Buzz about how, he's potentially a killer. But after Kevin has, multiple encounters with him, we then get that scene at the church where he meets him properly. He says Merry Christmas to him, he sits down, and they talk about their families. And I honestly think that's one of the best scenes in the entire movie. It's a really well-written scene between both characters where Marley talks about his relationship with his son. Kevin talks more about his family. And I think both Kevin and Marley get really good characterization in that scene. It's a performance I don't think gets talked about enough, to be honest.
Yeah, he's not on screen for a lot of the movie, but he adds a lot of heart to the movie when he has that conversation with Kevin in the church, just kind of showing that no family's perfect.
And he also has a really great line, too, when he says that he's afraid to call his son. Kevin says, "Aren't you too old to be afraid?" And then he has a really, really great line where he says, you can be too old for a lot of things, but you're never too old to be afraid.
Yeah, and then the fact that he comes in and saves the day at the end of the movie.
Yeah, and I'll have more to say about that later. But actually, fun fact for you, Andrew. Originally, Marley wasn't going to be in the movie at all. Chris Columbus included him in the script to give the movie a more serious layer. And I'm glad he did because I think the ending's really great when he reunites with his son.
Yeah, that was a good decision.
Yeah, I agree. But another big pro of this movie is definitely going to be the score. And that shouldn't be too surprising considering how it's done by John freaking Williams.
That man could quite literally make nail nails on chalkboard into an Oscar-nominated score.
I genuinely think that he could. Is this one of my favorite John Williams scores of all time? Not necessarily. My favorites are always going to be Jaws, Indiana Jones, Star Wars, and also Superman. But with that being said, I still think it's great work by him. It's a very charming and I think whimsical score, and it really matches with the tone of this movie too.
Yeah, it feels Christmassy, but not in your face Christmassy.
And one other pro that I think we both have with this movie would just have to be the traps. I honestly think there's a lot of creativity with the traps, to be honest. I mean, you got the signature trap with the paint cans swinging down and just hitting Harry and Marv in the face, or the door handle that Harry grabs and burns his hand and then leaves that M in his hand, or the tar that Kevin smears on the stairs and Marv just walks up and then eventually he just steps on a nail. I think there's a lot of creativity with the traps, to be honest.
Yeah, there's a lot of creativity, and that's why I love the fan theory about this movie that Kevin McAllister becomes Jigsaw. As stupid as that sounds, I love it because there's a lot of very weird parallels between Kevin McAllister and John Kramer.
Well, and one little detail that I enjoy is the map that Kevin drew, which has all the traps on it around the house. Apparently, that map was actually drawn by Macaulay Culkin during production.
I did not know that. That's a nice touch.
I just always enjoy little details like that.
No, I really like that touch, actually.
But now that we've gone over all our pros, I guess now we should get into our cons. And Andrew, I think that this is one that we both have.
Yeah, there's a very, I'm not going to say large, but sizable quantity of videos on YouTube of trauma docs or ER doctors reviewing the trap injuries in this movie that Harry and Marv sustained. And long story short, they wouldn't have made it through the end of the movie.
Probably not, no. Because if you look at all the traps, so you got one trap where Marv pulls on the string and then the iron falls through and then it just lands on his face. You know what's funny? His eye isn't damaged, his nose isn't busted or anything. I love how the only injury that he has is just that burn from the iron and just nothing else.
Yes, because he would have at least been concussed after that.
Or when he just slips down the steps going down to the basement. I really think that that would have broke one of his ribs, at least.
Yeah, as somebody who has slipped on ice, you don't get up that easy from it.
Or even the burns that Harry gets, the one on the doorknob when he just grabs that and leaves the M in his hand. I'm not an expert here, I'm not a doctor, but I don't know if just sticking your hand in snow would really just make that better.
Actually, they don't recommend that because that can cause different kinds of burns because you can't actually get burns from ice. You say touch your bare skin to dry ice. Plus, it can also just cause the tissue to immediately die, and that can be even more painful.
Or even when he takes the blowtorch to the head. I mean, he then sticks his head in the snow again. I'm pretty sure that some of your hat is melted to your skin now.
Yes, not only that, but that kind of damage to your skull would actually cause your brain to boil inside of your skull. Yet you wouldn't be walking away from that.
Also, the events that lead to Kevin being left home alone. Okay, so the power goes out that night, conveniently at the same time that Kevin has to stay in the attic. Everyone wakes up super late. They then rush around the house trying to get ready and everything. And I get that Kevin's up in the attic, but you're telling me that he didn't hear any of that? Just a full house of people running around? But also, just the fact that this random kid just shows up while they're doing the head count and all the kids and everything, and then they get it wrong. Okay, that's a little convenient, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, that's one of those. It's the phrase you like to use, Cade. The movie has to happen.
Yes, but also just one of the other things, this should not annoy me as much as it does. It's the scene where Marv goes behind the house, Kevin turns on the TV while he's about to set off the firecrackers, and the movie comes on, the part that goes, "Keep the change, you filthy animal." I get that Marv is probably the dumbest of the two wet bandits, but you think that he would know it's the TV? And I only say that because it even fools the pizza guy earlier in the film.
Yes, you'd think he might notice that, the door's not full of bullet holes, or, there's no blood spatter on the door. Yeah, that's one of those where if this wasn't a comedy, I would rail on that more. But since this is supposed to be a comedy and these two are supposed to be bumbling buffoons, I'm willing to forgive that kind of incompetence more because it does fit with their characters.
Yeah, and also, I just have to say, at the end, when Mr. Marley shows up and he saves Kevin, I like how after all these injuries that Harry and Marv went through, the iron, the paint cans, the blowtorch, and everything, I like how all it took for them to finally go down was an old guy just whacking them with a shovel.
Yeah, and it doesn't even look like that heavy of a shovel. It looks like it's made of aluminum.
Yeah, you do have to suspend your disbelief a lot with this movie, but does it automatically ruin the film? No, not at all. And with that, to close us off, Andrew, on a scale of 1 to 10, what are you going to give Home Alone?
Well, even though this isn't one of my favorite Christmas movies, I won't argue that it's a Christmas classic, and it is a comedy classic too. I'm feeling like a 7.75 for this. Again, it's a good movie. It's very rewatchable, and there's a reason why it's a lot of people's favorite Christmas movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, not my all-time favorite Christmas film, but I will say definitely still a good Christmas movie. So I think I'm going to lean more towards a 7.5 out of 10. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you all again very soon.